Hello, my friends. How are you doing? I hope you're having a super awesome day. This, again, look at that. It's me again. It's Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast. And this is our super amazing celebrity chat segment that comes out every week. And last week, you got to hear my friend Brian from Lumen Mindfulness. And we're staying on the mindfulness track because it's a pretty important track to stay on. And this week is my other friend, Nirmal from the Wellness Path. Hi, Nirmal. Welcome.
Hey,
So awesome to
hi.
see you.
Good to see you,
So
Heather.
happy that so grateful that you are making time for me and the people who tune in to listen. And
Yeah.
we were talking just before we came on about what we would talk about. And mindfulness is a pretty big topic, but I know that because I know some of your background. I know there's way more to you than mindfulness. So, can you tell me? I don't remember actually you ever telling me how you ended up getting into
Hmm.
where you are from where you were, as much as you want to share.
Sure. Yeah, I came out of the corporate world now almost 20 years ago. Seems like a long time ago, and
Right.
I've been in it for over 20 years at that point. And but I was introduced to wellness practices at about the same time I left that particular world, and I was exposed to and got quite interested in Kundalini yoga. And so I was kind of working along that particular track. And in the course of doing that, working with my mentor, though, she was also very involved with a program that stemmed out of that called Beyond Addiction. So I started working with people that were in recovery. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so, that through the program that I was doing at that time with her, it was a yogic based program, but it had all kinds of, wonderful insights into and practices that one could do in the course of looking at their recovery. And so, I essentially started, coaching in that regard at that time, as well as doing some coaching through, my role as a teacher and then as a teacher trainer in my yoga world. So that's
Right.
kind of how I got started. Yeah.
And the Beyond Addiction, that's through, is that the same philosophies as Gabor Maté? Because we've talked about him before.
Yes. Yes. So that was, in fact, my first exposure to him because he's, quite renowned in the recovery field, and we were using some of his incredible work as part of that Beyond Addiction program. And in fact, out of that program, my teacher developed with Gabor a psychotherapeutic approach that essentially captured his way of working with his clients that were in recovery. And so this beautiful training kind of flowed out of that. And I was on the ground floor, the beta testing group, as it were,
That's
before,
awesome.
yeah, before it was launched as this wonderful professional program that it is now today. So
And you're still teaching yoga.
I still teach. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm very involved with
Oh
that.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, because for me, a lot of these concepts, that flow out of the yoga teachings that came through, what I learned through the addiction recovery business, and then the stuff that I've studied, with Gabor Mate's approach to working with clients, they all beautifully blend together.
Right.
Yeah.
Even so, because I mean, we've talked about it. Like, I've been teaching yoga a long time. Did you know that I actually used to practice Kundalini? I don't know if I ever
I
told you
think
that.
you mentioned, yeah, that you maybe dabbled in it a little bit. Yeah.
Back in the day, that no, it is funny that when you think about when it was, you're like, it was only a couple of years ago, but it was probably like 15 years ago that I was trying out Kundalini. Oh
Nice.
gosh, time is time.
Yeah, it
Ah,
flies. Yeah.
let's not even start.
Yeah.
But yeah, the yoga world, the wellness world, because I
Mm.
do, like, I'm on the massage side of the wellness as well, and
Mm.
you're doing the addictions. You're always. I don't feel like I counsel people. I don't think
Mm.
I would call it more coaching people. People
Mm.
look to you for help with feeling better, really,
Yeah.
right? Somehow. So you, on the addiction side, is it like substance addiction type things, or is it any kind of addiction?
It's anything. In fact,
I'm
Gabor
addicted
is,
to chocolate. Can you help me?
yeah, oh yeah. Well, Gabor's approach to this is it is any behavior that you crave, get temporary relief or pleasure from, and can't give up despite the negative consequences. So
Okay.
it's any behavior. So I think of it more and a little bit more broadly applied to habits. And we all have habits, and
Right.
a lot of them are running in the subconscious, and some of them are promoting habits. They support us in a good way. But unfortunately, many of our habits are demoting habits, and we're not even, really connected with them so much. And so this is where, my work, I think, shows up, where I can borrow from a couple of different worlds as I'm working with a client to help, understand, where they're at in the moment and what might be underlying what's showing up today for them. So it's being able to kind of wind back a little bit in time through a particular process that helps unearth that. And then, the point you made about mindfulness, I think where this is so important also in our coaching world, it's that if you're not really mindful, or another word might be present, or just kind of in the moment rather than occupied with those ruminations going on in your brain, it's really hard to really act in a proactive way. So if I'm thinking about what I want to be doing with my life, I've got to be really still and present in order to even access that in my brain. And that's where mindfulness practices can be so helpful in the moment.
Right. I had two thoughts. One was, I'm glad you said that the thing that you couldn't stop had negative, because I was going to say, I'm addicted to breathing.
That might be a
So,
good thing.
yeah. So the addiction is something, to just super paraphrase it, is something that you can't stop, get temporary relief from, but has a negative long-term impact versus a positive one. Right?
Well, certain types of
Ish.
breathing, yeah. So breathing can take on many forms, and some ways that we choose to breathe, not choose, some ways that we breathe, in fact, can have a negative effect, and others can have a positive effect. So, for instance, the average adult breathes somewhere between 16 and 20 breaths a minute. So that's like, if it was 15, it would be 2 seconds in and 2 seconds out. And that would be quick and shallow. And that's very often, our default way of breathing. Whereas, people that are involved in yogic, like our meditation practices, work towards a more yogic kind of breath, a long, deep breath. So this is a way also to access, that thinking part of our brain, which will go, offline when we're stressed, for instance. So,
Right.
yeah, so that's where breath, if you have some ideas, practices that allow you to breathe more slowly and more deeply, for instance, can be, super supportive.
Well, now everybody's going to try and count how many times they breathe, but I'm going to tell them in advance, it'll be hard for you not to control it. Right? People will say, I can prove that I can breathe slower than that, but it's trying to catch yourself when you're being your natural self, so you can see where you usually are. And yeah, there's so many breath practices in yoga. I mean, I remember doing Kundalini. There were so many breath practices. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well,
some of them made my head blow off.
Yeah. So what you want to actually then do is start developing proper breathing as a habit, right? So this is about habits. So, and we practice that. If we do a daily practice, it's part of how we go about then training our minds as well to get behind whatever it is that's showing up. And in this example. It's a particular way of breathing. And then I think to the point is, because this is all going on automatically, how can we start to catch ourselves when we're breathing a particular way when we know that that's not supportive? Like for me, I'm a very shallow, chest breather unless I pay attention to my breathing.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you pay attention, it takes you out of whatever's swirling around in your head, because you can only pay attention to one thing at once. So they tell me multitasking doesn't exist. I tried to prove them wrong for years. But it is true. I can remember breath practices where the only way to get, and sometimes I actually do this when I can't sleep, is, a breath practice to take you out of whatever's going on otherwise, right? And I guess, what do you think is an effective way, and I guess might be an unfair question because everyone's different, but for people to be able to catch themselves?
Well, it is a difficult question just to easily answer. But one way that we can kind of check in with ourselves all the time is to, believe it or not, is to actually check which of my two nostrils is the one that's more open at any given moment. Because
it's not just allergies.
Yeah. Well, the fact that they may be clogged, yes. But the question is one of them still more dominant than the other? Because what happens is, if we're more dominant, let's say through our right nostril, if it's
I'm checking my nose.
Yeah. Well, so just imagine, let's assume for a moment it is.
Okay.
Okay. So what that's doing, though, that is engaging more actively with the sympathetic nervous system. It's like left brain, opposite brain hemisphere, like left brain hemisphere, the sympathetic nervous system, which is, foot down on the gas pedal, part of our autonomic system, right? And so that's great when I want to wake myself up and be present and in the moment and ready to do something.
So you breathe in and out of your right nose when you want to do that?
My right nostril when I want to be more activated. But what your question about sleep, for instance, is if I'm not breathing unconsciously through my more so through my left nostril, I can force it by simply blocking my right and breathing that way as a way to engage my parasympathetic nervous system. So that's that whole rest and digest mechanism in our nervous system.
People are going to say you're crazy. I can't breathe out through one nostril if I'm not holding the other one shut. And I'm just throwing that at you because I know that we can actually do it. But
what happens is, when we're in perfect rhythm, we go through these circadian rhythms. Humans do, and among them is even this breath way of breathing comes naturally, and we move back and forth in a cycle, one side to the other. So we stimulate and relax, so things are in balance. But what happens due to lifestyle and other things is we get stuck. So for instance, I know that way back when I was in the corporate world, it's referring to, and I first learned about, this, I was checking myself, as we were guided to in our teacher training program, like every 15 minutes over the course of a couple of days, what nostril is dominant. And I found that when I was in advertising, I was almost always breathing through my right nostril, which meant, oh my God, no wonder I'm like this, I can't relax. So, but that was really informative, so it allowed me to think about how can I do something, in order to bring a little bit more of that rest component into my life, into my day. And so I found that helpful. And there's a beautiful yogic trick then that's, is right around this, which is sleep on your right side. Because when you sleep on your right side, you're opening up your left sinus. And that is, again, helping stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system.
That's so funny, because I know in yoga, we always would say, roll over onto your right side when you come out of Shavasana. And someone told me it's because your heart is on the left. You don't want to put it under pressure, but
that could be absolutely true.
Could be.
Yeah, but when it goes to lying down and sleeping, it might be helpful to sleep on your right. So, as a habit, I developed that back in 99 when I did teacher training, I learned about this. So it's
Right.
commonly at least where I start my night.
That's so funny, because I was just checking. I'm like, well, my left nostril is open, but I thought it was just because my right nostril was blocked. But what was I going to say? Oh, so, and then there's like, we always talk about the alternate nostril breathing when we're doing yoga. And I guess that, are we balancing?
Yes,
Balancing.
yes. And in fact, there's a particular practice. This is one I'm going to be teaching shortly in an upcoming workshop.
Oh, we're going to tell them about that too.
We'll tell them about that later. And it's called perspective and emotional balance. That's just its name. But what it does do is you do this. You inhale through the left nostril.
Do you always start on the left?
In this particular breath practice,
okay,
always start on the left. You inhale left and exhale right. And so as you inhale left, what you're doing is you're activating and opening up that part of your brain, your psyche, that is expansive in nature. It's very yin, it's expansive, and it's calm and it's relaxed. It's more creative. That's what I'm inviting in as I inhale through that nostril. And as I swing around and I exhale through the right nostril by blocking the left, you can think of it as, what am I letting go of? And what I'm letting go of in this instance is those properties of the left brain hemisphere of the sympathetic nervous system, and it's the place where habits are formed and found. So I'm here
writing down notes.
Yeah, I'm inviting new perspective. I'm inviting a new way of being, thinking, and I'm letting go of my old habits.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody should do that as soon as they're done listening. Not right now, when they're done listening.
And I bring this into my coaching work with my clients, because it's about how do I get myself in a position where I can be open to new ideas, because I'm stuck. With my habits, let's say I'm just stuck and I'm obsessing about whatever that might be. And this is a breath practice, and it's done with a slow breath too, a long, deep breath, again, as a way of being able to settle the whole system down rather than being up like this. So anyway.
Is it one of those ones where you try to have the counting, the inhale and exhale the same length? Or
yes.
Is it?
Yes, because when we do things of different lengths, they do have an effect on us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just generally speaking, if your exhale is longer than your inhale, which happens, like, for instance, in chanting practices, right? When people inhale, they chant. So that's commonly longer. And what that actually also does is it actually stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system.
I thought it was just more work to breathe in. I thought I was being lazy.
No.
That's so funny.
You can. So we have practices, right, that are done in segments. We have them that are done in ratios, like longer inhale, shorter exhale, or vice versa. And they can go, as you said earlier, this goes on and on and on. There's so many variations.
Many variations in every practice, because I've done, I did Kundalini, and I went to Kripalu, and I went to Shivananda, and I've been around. Everybody's got their own take on it, and I think they're all pretty awesome. I'm an experimental one. I'll try everything on myself to see what happens.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was a woman on recently. I feel like a few months ago. Okay, I can't remember. I'd have to go back into the episodes, and that's all she teaches specifically is breath practices. And she told some stories about what happened and how she ended up in it. So interesting. How much can be achieved just with breath, right? Sometimes people think they have to do something epic to achieve a shift. Breathing is a pretty epic thing, because I know the physiology of it. Breathing by itself is pretty epic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can, if you can shift your mind, your consciousness, your feeling, your I've been talking a lot lately about the 6 aspects of wellness from the
Certified Coaches Federation.
Spoiler alert, Nirmal and I are both in the Certified Coaches Federation.
The wellness wheel.
The wellness wheel, although I turned mine into a flower.
Oh, nice.
Yes, but it can affect all of them, right? And it's important. And it is a mindfulness practice as well. So sometimes people, when they think, oh, I can't meditate, and they immediately shut down and say that it's impossible. Like mindfulness practices have almost as, like, if you add on breathing as a mindfulness practice, there's so many ways. There's so many ways to have a mindfulness practice. You don't have to navel gaze, right?
No, you don't need a mat.
You don't need a mat.
You can
Nothing
sit in
fancy.
this chair and just.
You don't need gongs or bells or anything. All you need is you. And when I teach my yoga class, I always say it a bit tongue in cheek, but I always say there's 2 rules in all of life. You got to breathe. Don't cause yourself any pain. So those are my only rules in yoga. So the breath work, obviously, is the number 1 rule.
Yes.
Whatever your breath is going to be.
Yeah.
And you use this with your coaching clients as well as your yogis, as well as your, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, with my coaching clients. See, because one of the like when I do, for instance, some of the compassionate inquiry work where we go and perhaps in that process, we start to uncover the things that disconnect us from our authenticity, because that's commonly, our way of coping with that disconnect is commonly what, shows up as these demoting habits we were talking about earlier, or addictions, or whatever that might look like, whatever that behavior might look like. And so once, though, that you have some awareness of maybe this is where that originated, what do you do with that? Or what do you do with that moving forward? And again, sometimes it's about visiting, very difficult periods in one's life. And so being able to be present with that and regulated, settled in a way that allows you to really kind of perhaps hold that pain. It's where then breath practices can be so helpful. And so when you start to, simply do this on your own, then it's easier to visit those difficult places. Another thing I think that's so important is, we know our own personal triggers, things that set us off, right? That might not set the next person off. So they're really our own, and it's our own stuff. And one of the things then that I work with people on is how to be more present with what's showing up in that moment, and recognizing that there's a cycle that's going on that we can be more present with when we start to connect with our feelings and our sensations. So this is the early warning sign that's going to show up, blah, like this. And so the question is, before it goes into blah, as a cycle, it plays itself out over and over and over and over and over again. Can we bring some awareness to that and then hit the pause button? And this pause button then for me is where, boom, for myself, it would be, it's like even just one long deep breath will be so helpful, because I know that when I'm agitated, my default way of being is I hardly breathe at all. I am probably the most shallow breather. And
we teach what we need to know, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had no clue. In fact, I thought, if I can relax my breathing mechanism, this is long before yoga. If I can just be totally relaxed, that's a good thing. And here I am on a table with someone trying to take my blood pressure and not even being able to find, a pulse.
Oh, Lord.
And this is no joke either. And I thought, they said relax. And so I can kind of go into the state where I feel like nothing. I'm dead. But I thought, no, this is me super relaxed, as opposed to actually breathing deeply, maybe slowly and deeply, And so it was only later through yoga that I got, right. we're talking about life force energy here that comes, in on the breath. So not breathing is not helpful.
You're cutting off that's why I tell people they have to breathe in my yoga class, right? I know there's some practices with breath holding. I don't teach those ones. Not because I'm against them, just because I'm not in the room with people usually when I'm teaching, and I don't want them holding their breath if I'm not there.
Especially I've had issues with blood pressure. Yeah.
Right? There's just so many things. I remember the first time I started practicing, I was learning Ashtanga at the time, and I was in this breath workshop, and we were holding the exhales, and I thought, these people are insane. Why? Because my brain is telling me, you better breathe, you're gonna die, you better breathe, you're gonna die. Now I didn't die, obviously, but it is interesting, the effects that it has, like not breathing, and how well suited your body is to make sure that you keep breathing, but not necessarily in the best way. I don't recommend, turning off your blood pressure there, Nirmal, because you think you're too stressed out.
Well, in Kundalini yoga, often we inhale and hold our breath at the end of an exercise, or even a meditation commonly. And sometimes we exhale and hold the breath out. And they do have, again, different effects. So the inhaling and holding the breath in, which is easier, mostly for people between the two, that, though, elevates blood pressure a bit. So if you suffer from high blood pressure, that wouldn't be a good practice.
Don't try to swim from one end of the pool to the other underwater.
Now, I have low blood pressure. And so for me, holding my breath out is an issue. Right. And in fact, can make me feel faint, but I understand where that's coming from because of this. And, but to the point you just made, a lot of fear comes up commonly, right, with people that are being asked to hold their breath out. And that's really interesting because it is this kind of fear of death. So it has an interesting way of breaking you out of your lethargy too.
Wait a minute.
I got to go into survival mode, right? But that's how a lot of our yoga and Kundalini yoga is constructed, to bring about a very particular outcome, is by the master who presented it. And among other things, that's something that holding your breath out actually accomplished, is in a what's the word I'm looking for?
Semi-controlled environment.
Well, it's that, but in a like it's done on purpose, like it's done
intentional.
Thank you. Yeah, it's done intentionally, to bring out a particular effect. So, but you're right. I mean, if people aren't in the room with you, it's harder to be responsible and just let people kind of do their own thing. And
right.
So yeah. So sure, you approach these things with some caution.
So let me ask you this, because you do have the breath workshop coming up, and it's on this Saturday, right? The
28th.
The 28th of
12,
May,
12 to 3 p.m.
And are you going to have people hold their breath out?
Nope.
No. So tell me, friend, I saw it come through on the calendar that you're having a fabulous workshop, and I'm pretty excited. I'm going to catch the replay because I know that I can't make the live version, but this is specifically for coaches, or anybody could benefit from it?
Well, anyone can benefit because it's for coaches and for coaches coaching their clients. So even using this breath practice that we did a little while ago, this is part of that. And again, understanding the mechanisms involved and why I might even show up and do it, might be helpful as a coaching aid, coaching tool. And but it's totally applicable to someone just for their own, well-being, right? I want to calm down. How do I do that? And so this will provide not only tools for that, but also some understanding of why, these things operate within us the way they do, and why these tools are helpful.
I heard that the Navy SEALs use breath work too, right? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure I'll have now someone's going to say, oh, Heather, you made this up, because I can't remember where I heard it. But at some point I heard that the Navy SEALs used box breath. And maybe you can tell people what box breath
Well,
is.
it's not a breath in our practice. So my belief, because I haven't, it may be the same as you inhale and hold the breath in and exhale and hold the breath out.
It's like, and it's the same count.
Suspend, exhale, suspend. And you're using the same count, like maybe 4 beats on the inhale, 4 hold, 4 on the exhale, and 4 hold out. So
that is how I learned the box breath.
Okay.
And I don't actually remember why they use it, if it's for focus or to just like have the mind kind of stay in one spot. But I have actually used that when I can't. This is way, way back before I was a yogi. Someone told me about box breath, and because I was super stressed out corporate person, I was like, I'll try anything. So I would try, kind of like you. I didn't hold my breath out though. I just tried box breath.
Well, if you do it, let's say that you were to do this breath for 4 beats in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4 out. So that's a total of 16, right? 16 beats. So one cycle of your breath is 16 beats, which is roughly a quarter of a minute. Right. So you know how earlier we were talking about how, typically we breathe 15 to 20 breaths a minute. If you breathe that way you just described, that's 4 breaths in 1 minute. Not 4 to 5 times that. That's just 4 breaths in 1 minute. So that has this beautiful effect, over time, as you develop that as a habit, maybe, to really settle your system down, to be able to engage the mind in a more neutral way, and access, that cognitive part of the mind where we're able to kind of think, more clearly, as opposed to, again, when we're in that somewhat stressed mode where, it's more of the reptilian brain that's going to kick in gear.
I had a boss who he was not my favorite boss, but one thing that he was smart about is one day he said, we have to slow down to speed up. So even though Hollywood would have you believe that going at 1,000,000 miles an hour and just shouting orders and being crazy will be effective, it's not actually all that effective. Your brain can't process. You can't think clearly when you're going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, especially on an ongoing basis.
Well, and the people that are around you cannot either operate, because it's like a settled body attracts or brings that kind of energy into the people that surround them. And somebody that's unsettled does exactly the same thing. So we can feel ourselves, right, being affected by what's in front of us very much. It's hard to stay regulated when someone is in front of you and in your face. So absolutely.
And I mean, whether you believe energetics or not, and people's energy, it does affect you. We are electric beings. We are electric beings, and the world is electric, and you do get vibes off of people, we will say. But even if you don't believe on that, if someone is being super agitated, just their body language, because we are highly interpretive of body language, just their body language can agitate you. And I feel, when you show you pictures of pots of boiling water, there's the quiet little molecules, and then one little molecule gets angry because he's hot and starts bouncing around, and then all the molecules are angry and bouncing around. That's
proof.
That's proof right there, mister.
It's in your pot on the stove as we speak.
If you can imagine those little molecules banging around. Hey man, whatever works for me. I always have visualizations of things. to imagine how things work on a smaller scale. You know, the little molecules going into my lungs and then zooming around in my system, especially after, well, even before my stroke. I always imagined these little things floating around. And I partly attribute because I don't know if you heard, Nirmal, that I had my MRI and my dissection is healed. But I partly attribute that to a lot of visualization of little knitters knitting my artery back closed and little Pac-Men chewing up all the blood clots in my bloodstream.
Awesome.
It worked, obviously.
Worked. And no one can tell you, just because they don't believe it, that it didn't work.
Right? They'll say, oh, it's just biology. I'm like, how do you know? There's not little Pac-Men living inside me chewing up my blood clots.
But, and then the thing is that what do we do from a wellness standpoint, personal practices standpoint, that either facilitate that or get in the way of that happening,
So true.
At the speed you would like it to, which is as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Yeah.
There is no pill for that. There is no pill for wellness. That's why we call it practice. Right? Exactly. It's a yoga practice. It's a Tai Chi practice. It's a breath practice. I could call this
walking in nature practice. It's going to bed at a reasonable hour practice. It's all of these
life
things.
Practice. We're all just practicing life. Some days the practice isn't going the way we planned.
Yeah.
So we call, hey coach, my practice didn't go as planned. Sports metaphor combined with wellness coaching. Hey coach, my practice was off today. Well, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Let's make it better.
Yeah.
You know what? I've actually never used, except for teaching yoga. I've never used breath practice with any of my clients, and I think that's interesting that you incorporate that. And I guess for me, when you I saw that you were going to have this workshop on using it for coaching it, I thought, well, of course he uses that, but I don't know why it had never occurred to me to use it myself with my clients.
Yeah, well, it's a means to an end. So if the end is the person sitting in front of you or across the screen from you is looking to be more settled, so that they can think more clearly, you and I and others have resources to maybe help them in that moment without having to, again, go to a lot of trouble. Get out of your yoga mat. No, you don't.
Right.
It's not necessary.
Or here's a prescription.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because I see prescriptions used quite liberally for the cycling anxiety. I feel like sometimes I feel like it's a societal cycling anxiety, which I'm not totally surprised after the couple of years we've had, but there's other ways we can, they might not be as fast.
Not as fast, but actually it's not about what do I do with these symptoms, which is maybe more of a Western medicine angle, right? Like deal with this pain in the moment. It's more about what's the underlying cause and how do I go about maybe mending something that's been many, many, many years, in the making. So no, it's not going to be solved, with one breath practice. But it's just about being more engaged is you do in your work too. It's like more holistically, these are all the things that can contribute to well-being as a way to help me heal whatever I need to heal.
Right. And it's interesting, like I actually got into coaching because I was doing things to help people be healthier, massage therapist and yoga. But I often felt like I was especially with massage, I felt like I was treating symptoms. I can make you feel better today, maybe for a few days, but we're not getting at what's actually causing the problem. So I was like, I've got to do something else. Yeah. This isn't fixing you because you keep coming and I feel like I had some clients who would come to see me twice a week and they were exactly the same every single time. I'm like, I just dealt with this. Why is this back again? I dealt with it. You didn't deal with it.
Yes.
So it's like, not to judge them or
No
anything.
pressure, no judgment.
No. But it was not a judgment of them. That was their life, and that was how they knew how to deal with what was going on with them. And they were doing their absolute best. But I said, there's something else that has to happen, because I can't keep hammering on the same muscles every single time you come to see me.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way to help you.
Yeah.
And yoga is one way, but depending on what kind of practice you do, because I've seen people use the wrong practice and make it worse. There's so many styles of yoga. I'm totally guilty that when I first started practicing, I thought there was only, all other yogas were like, oh no, there's only one yoga. That's when I was practicing Ashtanga. No. And I was corporate then too. So of course, that's what I was practicing. It was the wrong practice for me, by the way.
And it would be for me.
It was the wrong practice for me, for my body type, for my constitution, which later injuries showed me. So, I mean, but you don't know till you try it. Like, it's an exploration. And
well, the interesting thing about Kundalini is you might remember too, it's pretty forgiving that way. It's not about getting into this exact posture and looking to perfect that.
I always felt like I was doing calisthenics.
Well, sometimes it does feel like that, but
Right.
there are some practices too where you're just simply holding, in that particular exercise that might go on for what feels like a long time, holding this leg up or that arm up or whatever it might be, where you're still, but, it's doing specific things to your nervous system, which is the point perhaps, of having that exercise in this sequence, show up for you that way. So I liked it just because I'm the least flexible person I know, and it didn't matter. I still benefited from the practice.
And I've heard that used as an excuse not to practice yoga. I'm not flexible. And do you know who Ian Finn is?
I recognize that name.
He's like a rock star yogi from the West Coast. He was the original Lululemon ambassador, but I've been to a few workshops with him. He always says, and he's a surfer, so he's a bit, laid back kind of dude. He always says, if you say that you're not flexible enough to do yoga, that's like saying you're too dirty to take a shower.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
You can totally use that. I stole that from him years ago. You can just keep repurposing that one.
Okay. Yeah. There was a book that was an introduction to me for the Kundalini yoga practice. And in this particular book, one of the first things that I read was, you don't have to be a pretzel, to be a practitioner in this particular practice. This author said, all you need to do is it was something like lean in the right direction and breathe, and you'll benefit. And I thought, yes.
That's actually really good.
Yes.
And it's true.
What I love most, and again, there's a maybe misconception that this is about posture, and mostly when you talk yoga, and that's not my experience, and it's not really the experience of Kundalini yoga either. Because I'll tell you, when I was so tight, oh my gosh, I started yoga when I was 40, and I could not sit on the floor. But I'll tell you, the most satisfying part of my yoga class was lying on my back for deep relaxation, shavasana, and listening to the particular music that was being played that just transported me. And that's what kept me coming back week after week, and then year after year. And so for me, it was just a little glimpse into, all the different components of what yoga might mean to somebody, how you connect with your consciousness. And it can be through sound, through the sound current. And for me, it's like, I just like, wow, this is so beautiful. This music.
Have you ever been to the singing bowls?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Very powerful.
Very powerful. Sound can do it. Movement, I've had it happen in like the singing bowls kind of experience it. I've had it in a Kundalini breath practice. At the end of a Kundalini breath practice, I couldn't even tell you what planet I was on. And I've had it in even movement practices that I've experienced. Like I've experienced it through all three. I know some people don't. And I couldn't tell you why it happened that day, and it's very rare. For it to be for the profoundness that happens, but tell you, it's like playing golf. You hit one good shot, you're like, oh, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try that again. And then you never hit another one and you retire from golf. But you should keep trying the yoga and the breath and the meditation, because at some point you're going to hit that. It's like without expectation, because all practices are without expectation of anything in particular, or I try to anyway, because expectation is the murder of joy. But practicing it, and then one day it'll hit you and you'll go, oh, is that what they meant? Right?
Yes, exactly.
And when it happens, you're just going to want more of it. So just keep practicing, because eventually stuff does keep happening, right? It does come back. And you just start to feel better, even if you don't have the big, momentous, transcendent one with the universe experiences. I had one of those in a aromatherapy yoga session as well. Right? It's just like, oh my goodness, the stories I could tell. But anyway, but you don't need the big transcendent ones.
No.
It's like I've had one or two in a lifetime, and I'm happy to keep practicing because I feel good.
It's part of a lifestyle,
right?
It's part of it's one of your promoting habits, so to speak, right? It's just part of what helps you feel good about yourself and about life.
And I've had friends who said I can't do yoga, and I'm like, you're just not doing the right one. Or I can't do breath work, then you haven't tried the right one. I also say you have to find the right teacher. You have to find someone that you actually want to listen to or connect with or share your energetic space with. Because I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm pretty cool with that. If I was everybody's cup of tea, I'd never get any sleep. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
you have to share your people with other people.
Yes. Well, it's funny because part of my celebrity chats is, here's a whole bunch of people I know who are really amazing. If you like them, go talk to them, because I'm always willing to talk to everybody, of course. But if you don't want to talk to me, go talk to Nirmal, or go talk to Brian, or all the names whose name just left my head.
Well, here, let me, if I may, let me throw out a notion here, because this is something that comes out of these practices, and one of the reasons that I'll work with a client around doing a particular practice is because it's, as the teacher of our practice used to say, is like potty training the mind. So our biggest difficulty is just disciplining the mind in a way that the mind is no longer in charge, nor it should be. It should be there as a support mechanism for your soul, for your identity, for your authenticity, however you want to frame that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, it doesn't matter that you do a 2-hour practice or a 31-minute practice, or can you do anything every day, even if it was 3 minutes, because the mind will sabotage you at the earliest opportunity. And that's why, for instance, in our yoga practice, and it shows up in other practices too, we set a goal, which is 40 days. Do this one thing, doesn't matter what it is, but there's one thing for 40 days as a way of breaking an old habit and starting to seed in a new one. And so when we're talking about how do I let go of habits, because again, the mind hates a vacuum,
right?
And you need to replace it then with something. And so if I can say, hey, I'm going to be checking in with my true nature, another expression for it, once a day, every day, even as for 3 minutes, that would be so awesome. Because it would be a reminder that we're not all that other nonsense that's going on in our lives. We're actually these beautiful, perfect spiritual beings just having this human experience. And so if I can encourage, someone to start working on something that allows them to do that, every day, it starts to retrain the mind, and those grooves in the mind that hold us stuck, and our patterns start to change. And, so there's lots of method to this madness. It's like, I don't want to do yoga, or I can only do it once a week,
Yeah.
It's like, that's fine. But is there something you can do every day and commit? So it's the discipline of showing up with a support, maybe of a coach or somebody, that keeps you kind of there with your practice, even if it's 3 minutes. Do this breath for 3 minutes every day without fail for 40
Right.
days. And, the truth is, at the point in time you were able to hit day 40, day 41 is a breeze.
Right.
And on and on and on. So it gets to the point where it's kind of like brushing your teeth. It's not like there's no real effort involved. It's you're just doing something that's really supportive.
You don't think about it as I have to, right? It's just like,
your day kind of revolves around it.
I'm going to have my breakfast now. I'm going to, like you said, brush your teeth now. I'm going to go to bed now. Oh, I'm going to do my 3 minutes seated. I did Satanama at one point for
Satanama. Yes.
I had to use it was a cassette tape. That tells you how long ago it was. Yeah. I had to use the cassette tape to help me with the timing. But it is true. That doesn't, like, that's what I was trying to say earlier. It doesn't have to be something epic, and it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. It's just something that you can do. And when you start doing it and doing it regularly, that's like the little, just slowly shifting. Fast shifts, I mean, from the weight loss industry, fast shifts just swing back, right? People who lose 50 pounds in 50 days end up worse off than when they started. So it's like you want to ease yourself into it so that it just becomes a part of who you are.
Yeah, consistency. Right? Yes.
Right.
Part of who you are, absolutely.
Now because we talked about it and then I got distracted. I'm like Chris Captura. Wait, what's that over there? So your class is on the 28th of May, not March, May. Yes, May. And it's at noon?
It's at 12 for Eastern 3 hours.
Yeah, Eastern time for the non-Easterner people, because I know there's people on the West Coast and around the Australia who listen. And I'm going to put a link in all of the show notes everywhere for them to get over to CCF if they think, wow, this is really cool. It's 2 hours, did you say? Is it
3?
3 hours of breathing.
Well, and what you'll be doing, this is where I think it'll be great, is that you'll have a chance as a participant to practice, not only practice with me as I share what I'm sharing, but then there are going to be breakout rooms and you'll actually be teaching it with each other, as a way to actually, bring this into your system in a way that you'll know it and understand it.
That's
and
so
work
cool.
with it. And then you can ask me questions about it, afterwards. So I wanted to make it very practical and something that, again, you could go away with. And it's not like, what the heck did he do? What does this mean again? But actually practice teaching.
It's recorded as well, but
and it's recorded.
It's not the same as being there live.
No, but if for instance it interests you and you're just not available on that day or that time, you can register. You can register and get the recording as well.
That's what I'm doing, because I've already got a conflict that day. But I've also got inside track. I can just say, Nirmal, I don't get it. Can you explain this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there'll be some PDFs, so you'll have something physical to that you can take away with, as well as reference. Because I the literature says, I believe I'm teaching, there'll be three practical techniques that you'll walk away with, having worked with. But there'll be lots of little tricks, just like some of the things we've been talking about, like sleeping on your right side if you're, to open up that left sinus cavity to help.
My right one is still blocked. Just checking.
My left one's more open, and maybe that's good.
Maybe that's good. Amazing. I'm going to encourage everyone, even if you're watching this after the fact, I'm sure there's some way they could go back and get the recordings if they missed it,
Mm.
because sometimes they don't get to it in time. But
Yeah.
friends, check out. And also I'm going to put in the links to all of your information so they can find you directly if they want to find you directly.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Nirmal. Such good information, such good tidbits. I always learn something. Part of my celebrity chats, why I love them, is because I learn things too, which I can't help but love.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words for our friends? Any
No,
final
other
thoughts?
than just breathe.
Keep breathing.
Keep breathing.
All right.
Long and deep.
The longer and deeper, the better, right?
Yes.
Take care, everybody. I will
Thanks, Heather.
see you on the flip side.